And this leads to another interesting question related to the monetary system. Where did these billions come from? They could not only come from here. There is another very important aspect. Here is, how is it called, where the water flows out here in the bathroom?
Faucet. Faucet.
Yeah. Faucet.
Faucet.
Faucet, okay. Everybody sees what I mean. And this is not water here, this is money. And this money has its source not only in the amount which already is in circulation and can flow from here to there and can flow outside of the real economy, but there's additional source of money, and one of the sources is the central bank. The central bank is the source of creation of new money. And if one starts to ask where does central bank have the money from, one comes more and more to the insight that the money is created out of nothing. Out of nothing. This is a privilege for a central bank. And if one in the next step hears that some of the most important central banks in history were not public, not state banks, but private banks, starting with the Bank of England in 1694, and continuing until the Federal Reserve System in the United States, founded at 1913. Both very important, very powerful central banks who have a big influence by influencing the monetary circulation, by creating money out of nothing and bringing it into circulation, most of the time by combining it with an interest from birth on, from the beginning on. This privilege is in private hands, sometimes masked as the Federal Reserve System. At the first glance, one has the impression it's a state institution, federal, sounds already like this. But it is only some kind of facade. The owners, the real owners of the columns of this building of Federal Reserve System are big private banks and is a financial or oligarchy. Yeah, and this source is here and is able to create additional money out of nothing in order to flood the financial markets. This money must not flow here in the real economy. It flows into the financial markets and overflows the financial markets and leads to this. And those who know about the big tendencies, they will be wise enough to go into these transactions, for example at this level, and go out of this short before it goes down. And the hundreds who have followed, they will fall into the Abgrund. Okay, they will fall deep down. But it's not only the central banks with this privilege, which is amazing enough and dramatic enough, if they are private. It is also, and much more important even, the commercial banking system. I cannot develop this in this limited time today. But it can be worked out. It can be shown that the commercial banks are able to create money out of nothing additionally to the central bank money. Upsala. So there is central bank money, and there is on this basis a multitude of money created by the commercial banks, by the so-called deposits. Deposits can be used for transfer from one account to another without cash. And by this kind of transactions, it is possible on the basis of one real deposit. One pays €1,000 to the bank in cash and gets on one's account a figure. And one can use this figure for transactions, cashless, or one can take these figures and take cash again from the bank. This is very roughly only indicated. The basis, because not everybody takes it as cash out of the money, only 10%, for example. This makes it possible for the banks, for the commercial banks, to add to the central bank money an additional kind of money in this, with these so-called deposits. And there's a lot of confusion because something is called deposits where no real deposition has taken place. It is only putting in a computer a number on the account of a debitor. And this doesn't change the fact that the commercial banks are the creators of a big part, of a big percentage of what we had here as demand for social product or demand for financial assets. They created, again, out of nothing, bring it into circulation and take interest from the debitors. This is a good privilege. And if the debitors are not anymore able to pay the debt and to make debt service, then their property is taken away. So in total, one can say, with money which is created out of nothing, those banks, central banks, but additionally commercial banks, are in a privilege and in a position where they can take away property of growing parts of society. One can say they have means to plunder big parts of the world. And this is some kind of genius to invent such a kind of money creation, a monetary system. Because on the other edge, there are suffering not only individual debitors who have broken down, but whole countries, whole parts of the world, big parts of society in, let's say, third world countries, for example. They suffer under the consequences of this interest burden, and if they are not able to pay it, then the creditors or their international institutions like IMF and others, they say if you can pay, then we take control over your resources, over your population, over your policy. And this leads more and more from democracy, where it may have been existed, into dictatorship, where the dictatorship is functioning from behind the curtain.